Don't overthink it. It's just paint.
And welcome back to another episode of Paint Society. Today we're going to go over tips and tricks along the way for new painters and seasoned painters, things that you should know to make sure you get a nice solid paint job. In this particular video, we're using a beautiful Honda S2000 in Silverstone Metallic, paint code NH630M. You can see here we replaced the trunk with a CR Edition trunk. This trunk has the holes for the specialized CR spoiler with the internal bracing to help out with the wind dampening and make sure that the trunk can stabilize the spoiler properly. So we're replacing the trunk panel, we're fixing the bumper, and we're blending all adjacent panels. If you are new to paint, if you replace a panel on a vehicle, you must blend the adjacent panels. It does not matter how good you are with color, you will never be able to perfectly match that color. Here we're using a sealer primer. A sealer primer is mixed up differently than a regular primer. It's a little bit thinner and it does not get sanded. This takes away from the need to have to prime and sand. You can seal it once in the booth, and once it flashes 15 minutes later, then you can apply your base coat. So the technique for doing this is we're going to spray our sealer on our trunk. Here we're using the W400 WBX cap of 1.4, and then we're removing all of that paper. That paper was to protect the blend panels from overspray, because now we're going to seal in the areas that we want only. Here's the reason why, guys. We want sealer connected to all of the areas that we are putting our new paint on. This means we're going to have the same undercoat, and without the same undercoat, well, sometimes even with the same exact paint coat, it will not match. Here we're using a blending additive or a clear base, and what this is doing is it's going over the edge of that sealer, it's smoothing it out, and it's also giving us a nice surface for our base coat or metallic to land on. So here I'm using my DV1 with a 1.3, and we're doing this right away. We're not waiting on flash times here. Everything's done right after the last step is completed. Now we'll go ahead and then seal our whole entire bumper, and this can ensure that we're going to have a nice quality finish and everything is going to be matching. Just 15 minutes later, we're applying our first coat of base coat. Now if you're new to painting, if you want to get yourself a good paint gun, you can go with a DV1 base coat gun, a Wacom. Even Sada's laid down the base very well. We're using our Sikkens solvent paint here, and we can see we're just putting our base coat on the trunk first, and then we're going over into the quarter panels and extending the color right into that area. And you can see that the color is just blending fantastic. You never want to take your color all the way up to the edge of the quarter panel where it meets the door. If you do that, it's not going to match at all. So you got to control your base. You have to make sure that you're not taking it too far, and if you start to get sand piling, a condition where the paint gets dry, you're going to want to scuff that down with 1000 grit and reapply. Here you can see we're using a clear blender and adding some more reducer. We skipped ahead to the third coat, and now what we're doing is we're taking those metallics and making them more transparent, so we're going to lose them on this blend edge here. This is after 2 coats have already been applied. This is a third coat. We're backing up our distance about 3 or 4 inches, and we're just doing an orientation coat. That's a light coat from a little bit more of a distance. I do not change any of my pressure at this point, but guys, this is what you need to do on metallics. If you're having issues with model, take a step back and do a light coat. This is going to help just smooth everything out. Once again, if it's just too modelly, sand it down with 1000 grit and then give it another couple coats. That might help you out. This is the base coat finish that you're looking for. A silky smooth transition, a smooth finish. You cannot tell where the base ends and where it starts, and that is a good indication that when your clear hits it and it's sitting outside, you're never going to be able to tell or detect where the blend is. We also went ahead and did our whole base coat on the whole bumper so we can ensure a perfect match from the trunk to the quarter panel to the bumper. I don't like to go ahead and do too much tacking, but I will tack before the base and I will tack after it just to pick up any loose metallics or anything along the way that, well, it's just sitting on top of the panel. So make sure you're doing your inspection at this point. Make sure there's nothing that you need to go back and touch up, because once you put the clear coat on, there's no turning back. You'll have to wait 24 hours before you can sand it down and reapply it. If you're a new painter, take extra time to make sure that you're doing these tips properly to give yourself a good advantage to getting a nice paint job. From here, we're using our DV1, our clear coat gun, and we're applying it around 75% overlap. We're getting it on, but we're not getting on super wet. Right now, we're putting on the glue. Think about this. We're putting glue on for our next step. Our second coat of clear will come in 10 minutes from here, and that glue will stick to the first coat. Got runs? Wonder why? You're putting on the first coat way too wet. It's a lot harder to get a run out of the first coat of clear than it is the second, so make sure you put that first coat on wet, but not wet enough. We're following, again, a 75% overlap. Many of you might wonder why I can put it on so slow. Well, it depends on the gun itself. We're running a 1.3, so it's not like the clear is pouring out of the gun. We're also around 18 PSI on a DV1 clear coat gun. It is not a fire hose. It is not pouring on the material. It's a much slower gun, so I like that technique. I move slower. If you have a faster gun, you're going to have to move faster, and you're going to have tighter passes, and maybe have a little bit more of a distance from the panel. Here, I'm running around 4.5 inches from the panel, and I'm watching it atomize. I'm watching it from the side, making sure I'm getting nice, clear finishes and getting it covered without soaking it on, because I know in the second coat, 10 minutes from now, I can take care of it. A lot of new painters think they have to get the most beautiful finish right away. They want instant gratification. They want results right away. But one thing new painters do not understand is patience. Patience, patience, patience is the name of the game. If you're a new painter, take a step back. Let your material dry. Let it do its thing. We're working with chemistry here. Things are not going to happen right away. And if you mess up, oh well, wait 24 hours, stand it back down, and redo it. It's just paint. It's not the end of the world. We're applying that first coat here, moving nice and slow, making sure that we have good coverage on all of our edges. We don't want any dry spray. Dry spray does not look good, and it can barely buff it because you don't have any material on it. Dry spray is when you don't have enough coats of clear coat on your panel, and it's evident mostly in our clear coat finishes. We'll allow this to dry for a good 10-15 minutes. We'll hit up our extra accessory parts along the way and make sure that we're having a nice clean finish on all those parts, so when we bolt everything back together, we're going to be really happy with the finish. Also, a lot of new painters, when it comes to spraying bumpers, have difficulty with these contours in different areas because it's different shapes and sizes. What my recommendation for you guys is, listen, paint it like it's not there. Act like it's not there on the first coat. Just keep going over it. Sometimes if we try to shoot clear in some of those hard to reach areas, we're creating instances where we can get a run. Remember, I just talked a few moments ago about getting your glue on. Just imagine putting on that first coat, and it doesn't need to look beautiful. It's so the second coat sticks. When you put that second coat of clear coat down, well, it's going to stick much better. It's not going to run off the surface. So what does that mean for you? You can get more aggressive with the second coat. You can move a little bit slower, but you don't want to put too much material on, because what looks good in a booth or in your garage the next day is not going to look good. That's when you get dye back. Too much material. The clear does not have enough room to solvent breathe, and it just traps the solvent and it dies completely. So that's something that we don't want. And I guys need you to remember, take your time with paint. Remember, give it time, because it is a science, and that science was what will help you here on Paint Society, remembering those clues and tips along the way. We have a beautiful finish here. I'm loving it, loving it. Sorry if I was a little bit hard on you in this video, guys. You need to understand the fundamentals of painting and just remembering something. It's not all about technique. It's just about reading the directions and listening and working with what you have and making it work. You see, we have a beautiful finish here, and once we got it all back in the shop and somewhat assembled, we have a perfect matching bumper, quarter panel to the door, and trunk. Guys, this is Brian from Paint Society reminding you, don't overthink it. It's just paint.